Well, hello, Nick Smoot here, and I want to make sure my audio is working. It is. I don't know. All right. Hi, Nick Smoot here, and I am the founder of Innovation Collective, and you're on my YouTubes again. Today, we are interviewing Jordan Blashek. Jordan is an author. Jordan is a military veteran. Jordan is a leader, a director at Schmidt Futures, which is founded by Eric Schmidt, the former CEO and chairman of a little company called Google. Jordan is the stud. He is highly educated and not in a snobbish way. We've all met folks who are educated, and then we've met people who just get it. They have done the work, they have learned, they are applying it to the world in a meaningful way. Jordan is one of those humans. I believe he's Yale undergrad. Let me see here. I want to make sure I get this right. No, Yale Law School, an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business, and a BA from Princeton. So pretty much you cannot, I don't know, maybe throw in like some sort of a degree in electrical engineering from Carnegie Mellon. Go get that, Jordan. And then you'll be the most educated human on earth. But he, as I said, he doesn't take the education lightly. He applies it well to the world, and he's doing his best to create change. His book, Union, which is out, you can go buy it today, is a story about him and one of his dear friends from college, and how they're trying to figure out how do you harmonize kind of what's going on in our country around politics or around beliefs. And he and his friend have different beliefs, but they also traveled across the country on road trips multiple times and went and toured the United States in a lot of ways. So please do check out his work. Please do listen and give this 5 stars if you enjoy it. I don't even know if there's 5 stars on YouTube. A thumb up, maybe subscribe, share it, comment. It's a long conversation, and I think it's a very meaningful one that gets to a place where we discuss and explore the American dream, kind of what is necessary to get us to the next phase of the American dream as a country and as a globe. And as you can imagine, it ranges a little bit from politics to capitalism to kind of perspective on human flourishing. And Jordan has some wise insights, and I am excited that you get to listen to this. So I hope you enjoy. And I don't have anything else to say. I'm going to shut up and let you enjoy Jordan tonight. Well, I am here with Jordan Blashek, and I've been making sure I understand his name appropriately because I've butchered it in the past. And I've known Jordan for a while. He is an author. He has served in the military, and he has also been leading some efforts to really, I would say, rebuild a lot of the confidence in the American dream in our country. I'll let him talk more about that. But thank you for being here, sir.
And thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And currently you are sitting where?
So at the moment I'm sitting in Manhattan in my little apartment in Chelsea. So I've been here for the past 5 months through the pandemic, and yeah, just riding it out.
And you moved from, if I remember, you moved over from San Francisco, right?
That's right. I was in Palo Alto.
Okay. So that's, you know, that move for 5 months. I mean, you were right before all of the moment, right, of the current pandemic, and now you're in New York. You haven't even really had a chance to experience New York fully, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's well, it's been a different experience of the city. It's been interesting to see the character of the people come out during this period.
Yeah, I could imagine. That's a different time in New York for sure. I haven't even been able to be out there actually. We have multiple projects in New York with Innovation Collective. I keep trying to figure out a flight out there, and we're having our travel restrictions in our own country because I'm in Idaho right now. and Idaho, we've hit number one for our peak trajectory on cases. So I'm not allowed in New York for a bit, apparently. But, oh well.
At some point, we'll have you back.
Yeah, at some point. Well, let's go on a journey today. We're going to talk through the book, a little bit of your background, some of your work with Schmidt Futures, and why you're doing that work, and kind of what you hope to do, I think, in the long haul, personally and maybe professionally as well. But out of the gate, there's a who you are right now, but then there's also this space where you were a young man, you grew up somewhere, you picked a path of serving in the military. Talk a little bit about that season of life for you, being young Jordan and military, and why did those decisions come together, and maybe how it's shaped some of your thinking.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Los Angeles to a nice set of parents. My parents, Carolyn and Rob, were perfect. I have an older sister, and I think in hindsight, it's easy to tell a story for why my choices in life make sense and how I ended up in the military. But if I really go back and think about what happened, growing up, my dad used to always read to me from this book by Bill Bennett called The Book of Virtues. And it's just a series of stories about heroism, courage, honor, integrity, usually taken from Roman or Greek mythology. And I just loved it. And I remember, every night asking my dad to read a few more stories. And they just really stuck with me. And so growing up, I always wanted to embody these good virtues. And of course, I always failed, like every kid. And then around high school, my mother started a nonprofit to send care packages to troops. She was really inspired by 9/11 and the generation who went off to war. And she wanted to feel like she was serving that group. And through her, I met all these military veterans. And my experience with them was that they really did embody these qualities I revered. And everyone I met had this sense of confidence and sense of purpose that I wanted to emulate. And it hadn't been on my radar at all to join the military until I started interacting with them. No one in my family served. And by the time I got to my junior year of college, it was the only thing I wanted to do, that it felt inspiring, that if I didn't do this, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And so I made the decision senior year to join the Marine Corps.
That's awesome. So no one in your family, I want to call this, make sure that I put a pin in this for everyone. No one in your family served historically, which is a significant thing for you. You're like first gen college student, you're first gen military. And Israel has mandatory service, right? As a country. How do you feel? Because it sounds like for you, some people look at military with a sense of disdain, right? You have moments in our history where certain wars have been fought, where now people are questioning what were the motives truly, or different pieces. And I think sometimes the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater, where it's like anybody who serves gets thrown into the agenda that maybe wasn't clear.
Right.
How do you feel about the idea of some form of mandatory service, or setting a bar of expectation for generations? Because it sounds like your dad set a bar of expectation of heroism and contributing value and beauty and risk for the greater good of others in your mind. And then you found an outlet for it through military. And when I look at society right now, kind of feel like there's maybe a bar missing for people to hit, and they don't know where the outlet is. So how do you feel about mandatory service, and or what is a better way to get people to a brain space that your dad got you into? And what are the options to maybe pursue that now that you're, where you are in life and looking back?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm a huge fan of universal service in countries like Israel and South Korea. I think it's done wonders for their country and for their populations. I think the hard thing in the US is that we have such an independent streak in the idea of mandatory anything is like sort of goes against our one of our like great kind of qualities as the American people. And so I don't think universal service will ever work in the United States, but I think there are ways we can get close to it, and we should try to get close to it. And there's a few threads in here that I will probably keep coming back to, but one of the things I saw on the road over the last few years as I was traveling for this book is there's just this deep desire or hunger for meaning and community in people's lives. For whatever reason today, I think there's been a breakdown of community and paths that give meaning to people in life. And so they're craving it, especially sort of the millennial and Gen Z generations who are coming up. They don't really go to church. They don't really join groups as much. And they're trying to find like, how can I have a sense of purpose in my life? Because everybody wants their life to be meaningful and everybody wants a community. And the military for me gave me that in spades. Every day you put on the uniform and you have a sense that you're part of a thing bigger than yourself. You're fighting for something or training for something that is important and that your country is asking you to do. And you're surrounded by, like-minded people. They're diverse in every sense. They come from all over the country, but they're part of this shared culture. And so the military gave me both meaning and community in a really deep way. And it was only after I left and kind of lost that sense of belonging and meaning in my life. And as I was out on the road, seeing so many other people kind of like searching for it, that I realized how important this is to our lives. And we need to start rebuilding both those paths, because without it, I think we're seeing a lot of the results across the country. You're seeing people, joining aggressive protests and movements because they're finding both those things in those movements. Or you're finding high rates of depression. You're finding high rates of suicide. I think all of these are manifestations of the lack of meaning in community. And so, I think there's a world in which we try to do a lot more to foster an ethic of service and create opportunities for it where it's not mandatory, but it's highly incentivized. There's actually a group called With Honor. It's a bunch of, it's a super PAC that supports veterans running for office. And the major legislative item they're going for is trying to expand service opportunities. So things like AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, like anything where people can serve. It doesn't just have to be the military, but there needs to be funding for that. And again, to connect to another thread, if we want to make the American dream real for the next generation, we have to create pathways. And what better way to get your start as a person in the country than to spend 1 or 2 years building up skills, a network, life skills by serving your country.
I couldn't agree more. I think when you look at, a comment you made that ties directly into a very tense moment for our country around the protests, around a pandemic, around political upheaval, people are trying to find a place of that belonging, which is leading them to these extreme camps of belief. And I love what you were saying around the diversity of the military, but a shared mission. And I do believe serving and getting the dirt under your fingernails, whatever that looks like, of actively being in the arena, maybe the man in the arena. Like when you're in it, it's a lot harder to judge others who are in it with you, but might be trying to solve it a different way. You start to like collaborate a little bit versus when you're out in the stands, it's them over there, right? So, I think your comments are very relevant for right now. And I'm hopeful, on the American dream. I want to jump into that. But before we jump into the American dream, I want to talk a little more about the book. So tell us a little bit about this book, because look, you've been on this ridiculous road trip with a long-haired hippie, right? You're a military guy. You guys have been all across the country. You wrote a book about it. And, what maybe motivated the book? How did it become something that you were just like, you were pregnant with this thing and I've got to birth it? Was it book first and like, let's do the road trip? Or was it like, oh man, how did this, let's do a book and then go on a road trip? Like how did it all come together for you?
Yeah. So the genesis of the book was I left the military in 2014 and I go off to law school, and I feel pretty out of place. I'm going to Yale Law School. I'm a Republican and a vet. Yale is like one of the most liberal institutions in the, and you know, I don't know what I wanted to do. Part of going to law school was because I didn't know what I wanted to do. But while I was there, you know, I felt that lack of meaning and purpose pretty deeply. And I missed my time in uniform. I missed my friends. And that first year was tough, kind of losing my military identity and trying to figure out what was next. And at the start of my second year of law school, I met this guy, Chris. And as you described, Chris is a hippie. He's got hair down to his shoulders, wears earrings, grew up in Berkeley, son of an activist mother. So grew up protesting the Iraq war. You know, yes, we're like white dudes, but in terms of worldview, we couldn't be further apart. And we struck up this great early friendship. He also didn't want to be a lawyer. He wants to be a journalist. And so, you know, we mostly just like ended up drinking whiskey together and having these like great philosophical conversations. And then as the 2016 election got closer, we found that we were just always fighting. Like every conversation came back to politics, and somehow those conversations would just break down where, you know, we were always just trying to convince the other of our side, and, you know, you never really get anywhere. And so as we got closer to the election, May 2016, my sister's getting married in LA, and I decide I've never driven across country before. I've always wanted to. I feel like it's like this American rite of passage. And so I decide to drive. And one night, just on a whim, I asked Chris, like, hey, do you want to go with me? And so we end up taking this road trip together. And on the road, you just see the country differently. It's so beautiful and the landscape's epic. You meet interesting people and you have these experiences that show you a different side than what you normally get if you just listen to the media. And we actually had an experience in Idaho that became very formative for the book. I won't go into it in too much detail, but basically a state trooper pulls us over, and he's so confused by Chris and me in the same car. He doesn't really understand what's happening. We have different driver's licenses from different states. My car has New York plates. And he just doesn't really understand what we're doing. So he thinks we're drug running, and he ends up in.
I was going to say, you're drug mules. Just go with it.
So he thinks we're drug running and interrogates Chris for like 40 minutes. And it was only after I told him, like, hey man, I'm a vet. Like we would never do that. Like, here's the story.
Oh my
that
gosh.
He ends up shaking our hand and lets us go. And actually, in a very relevant to the current moment, you know, afterwards, Chris is like, wow, I didn't know cops could be nice. And I was like, yeah, if you treat them with respect, like almost every encounter is going to be okay. And he was like, well, that's not true. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's true. Like that's what I've experienced. And he's like, well, it's not true for minorities. And we end up having this explosive fight. And so that experience combined with just what we saw on the road made us realize that as Trump got elected, that, you know, there's something out there to be found on the road, like something about the soul of the country, something about who we are at this moment, what's polarizing us, that we wanted to explore again. So we did another road trip like 7 months later. And after that trip, we realized there was a story here that we had to tell. And at that point decided to write a book. So we ended up doing 4 more road trips. We went back to Idaho a couple times. Idaho is the only state that has 2 chapters in the book.
Come on.
So pride of place. And
Idaho deserves multiple chapters. I mean, it's an interesting place for sure. It's one of those libertarian bastions of hope that I think everyone's still trying to figure out their political stances every day when they wake up here.
Yeah, and you know, it's just beautiful and good people. So we end up writing this book basically as this search for what unites us across the country. Like, what are the shared values we all still have, and what are the parts of American life that tell those stories. And so that's the heart of the book. And at the end, we end on this message of hope that, you know, beneath the conflicting beliefs and priorities we all have, there are these shared values that we have in common as Americans. And that common feeling we have towards each other is still there, and it has to be tended to and cultivated, but it's still there. And we saw good people across the country working really hard to rebuild and to repair. And that's reason for hope, because that's always been what it is in America. It's ordinary people who fix things. It's not the politicians. It's not kind of like our titans of industry. It's just ordinary people who fix this country.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, it's, do you know James Fallows at the Atlantic, Our Towns?
Yep.
You know, not exactly the same, different approach for sure. But I think that search for that common thread, which I love, because I've been known to say, look, a human's a human. Like, we have a lot of the same motivating things. There's a few outliers, like real freaks of nature that, you know, maybe they're not the normal human, but majority have very similar things that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, make you have that feeling inside. It's satisfying, it's satiating something in you that just you're hungry for. And if you want to say that's not true, you're lying to yourself. Like, watch a stadium. One of my favorite things is to watch like a little kid have a moment of success. And what do? Like, they like pump their fists and do these things in the exact same way that professional athletes do, in the exact same way. Like, we're weird. We have these carnal things inside of us, and it's created a system that, you're absolutely right, could be a form of unity if we could see that is what the goal is. How we get there, people can have the questions around, right? Democrat, Republican, whatever. But I love what you said about, we fix things, we create that. And it, you know, the book is out now, Union. Go buy it for anybody who's watching this. We will have Jordan at Think Big Festival kind of talking about startups and Union, kind of, you know, some thoughts on that as well. But be sure to go buy the book, give them like a 5-star rating, just for, you know, spending all the time in a car with a hippie and getting stopped in Idaho. Yeah, getting stopped in Idaho by the ISP. I sincerely apologize. There's just one spot. I bet I probably know where it was. Was it on I-90?
Yes.
So there's just one spot where there's no other back roads to get through the hills. And so a lot of the state troopers hang out there, and they just bust people for drugs all day long, because everyone's brought down to a specific funnel. So that's part of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a lot of people going from like Colorado to California transferring drugs.
Yep. There was a question there, I promise. And what I was trying to get to was, you know, book is out. The book focuses a lot on this thread of humanity that can bring us back together. Can we bring our country to a place of unity or union? And your work at Schmidt Futures really does focus a lot on the American dream and pushing innovation and technology forward, pushing, you know, kind of policy thinking, and really unlocking the sciences, and a belief that it's people who hold those secrets. You got to listen to them and then empower the great people, right? The American dream was a shared global vision. And in a similar way that the American dream, when it first was launched, it was the rest of the world looking at this vast landscape saying, let's go get that thing. And so there was this shared belief. And the American dream then got turned into a marketing narrative, and kind of baked into the Industrial Revolution for whatever that's worth. And we really created some great goods, a lot of cheap shit faster, and got better at that. Kind of got us to where we are. And it feels like now we look at the American dream as something that's like, it's ours only. And we're trying to, like, in a weird way, it's politicized and people are arguing like they've got the right answer to it. But it sounds like when you talk about union, you see that the American dream is something that's shared in the hearts of just humanity, that they want something more. And your work at Schmidt Futures is about unlocking that in people. How do we get back to a belief that the American dream is possible again by the masses? Because you know, there's a lot of data that shows people don't believe that anymore. It's going down. The index is dropping for people who believe their lives will be better than their parents. Yeah. So, you know, from the book, from your work at Schmidt Futures, how do you look at this trajectory of the American dream? And what are your, I guess, suggestions to unlock those little things inside the hearts of all that you see?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a big question.
Yeah.
My starting point for this is like my belief is that the American dream, uh, it's constantly evolving. And so, if you go back to the founding of America, I think the dream at that point for a lot of people around the world, and especially here in the US, was this dream of equality of power. That, up until then, every nation was ruled by an aristocracy or a king or an elite class. And there wasn't this idea that ordinary people were able to participate in the governance of themselves. And that was an aspiration. You saw it in things like the writings of Montesquieu and Locke, that it was an aspiration. But here, more than anywhere, that became a reality. And so I think the virtue of America is that whatever that global aspiration is of the era, that here we for some reason we're able to pursue it first. And it's probably a feature of our country because we're an invented country. We were invented out of nothing. We all we have is a set of ideals that we aspire to, and then people can come from all over the world, and through this weird process, you get to be an American. And so the U.S. led the world in this new aspiration, which was sort of the equality of political power. And then fast forward 100 years, and I think the new era. The question was, up until that point, the world's wealth was contained in a fraction of the population. It was like the aristocrats who have all the wealth. And we went through this incredible era where there was this democratization of wealth, that the industrial era just led to this flowering of growth and capitalism, and spread wealth far more broadly around the world. And that really was driven here in the US. And from 1900 to 1960, you just had this incredible growth throughout the world, driven by US capitalism. And that's when you get the marketing aspect of this, of everyone should have a house and a car in the suburbs, and the American dream is earning more than your parents. And that was true for that moment. That was true for a moment. But it's not what the American dream will always be. And I think the question now is, the world has changed so much. So what is it that everybody really aspires to? What is in the hearts of people around the world that they're yearning for? And I think whatever it is, I don't actually know if we know what it is yet, but whatever it is, I think it will happen here first. We will figure it out. And part of that is because more than most other countries, we have this petri dish kind of experiment type feel to our lives. And we empower kind of decentralized groups to just experiment and figure things out. And so, my hunch is that the American dream, the global dream of the next few decades, is this idea of choice, that I get to choose the kind of life I want to live. I get to choose the work I find meaningful, the place that I call home. All these things will be given to or available to the masses broadly. And up until now, it hasn't been. You kind of work in whatever industry is dominant in your town, or there's only a handful of jobs you could possibly do, and your education only lets you do that job. But today, with mass education available online, you can learn anything online. The ability to learn how to code and then go live anywhere. The ability to just become your own small business and easily access customers around the world. All these things are providing choice in a way that's new. And so I think, again, America will be at the forefront of this, but it's not fully clear yet, what that next will be. But that's how I'm thinking about the American dream. And so I do think this hand wringing over is the American dream alive and well is actually somewhat misplaced, because yes, that old dream, the dream of having a house in the car in the suburbs, maybe that is no longer true, but I don't know if that's what people are aspiring to. We can point to it and say well, things aren't as good as it was before, but you can also point to other things and say before we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have supercomputers at our fingertips, we didn't have all the different options for entertainment and news and luxury goods that we have today. And so we do have a lot more choice than our parents had. And so again, whatever it is, I think America will get there first.
Yeah, I hope so. And it makes me glad that that's how you're thinking, especially in a role as a leader and as an author, working with an organization like you do, I'm bullish on throwing the spaghetti at the wall. That I think it should be us that leads. I think it's a very crucial moment when right now we're looking at how do we rethink education. And to me, a little bit confounded by pro sports and education. And this, I promise I'll get to a question. But when I look at pro sports, at first everyone's trying to figure out, like, how do we put cutouts in the crowd to make it feel like it did? It's like, no, wrong question. Don't make it feel like it did. There is no going back, right? Going back doesn't exist in society. There's only forward. There's only the new today. And so instead of taking advantage of, well, what's first principles? Play the game of stickball, whatever stickball game that is. Try and score points and win, and have people who love it watch it and be entertained and participate in a meaningful way. We should blow that thing up and figure out, like, how do we rethink it to be more meaningful and more intimate and more creative, as it's an opportunity versus mourning what we have lost. And looking at education, I'm watching a lot of our country right now go, we got to go back to what this was. It's the only way. Or we've got to try and do exactly what that was, but online. And it's like, what are we doing? Why are we trying to reproduce the fans as cutouts?
Yeah.
And we have such an opportunity to rethink, how do we create community? How do we unlock the potential in people, give them access to magic about this rock that we're on, put them around resources to innovate quickly and rapidly, and to think that, in states where there might be a teacher that's excellent at a certain topic, now remotely they can move laterally across a state, my God, let alone the county, let alone maybe a region of the country. This expert can serve many quickly now, and there is no busing. There is no movement of them. And yet we're still trying to say one teacher, one classroom, all these things for like a certain age and grade. It's so silly to me. My question is, community and education. You mentioned about community as a key piece to the American dream as you're driving and seeing what's out there. People are stupidly lonely. Pandemic is not helping because everyone's feeling like they're stuck in home. Social media, today is the day. We have the big, the tech high noon moment where everyone's sitting there in DC inside the Beltway going, we're going to tell you why this isn't a monopoly. And then, DC's going, it's a problem. One could argue we might need an EPA for the mind, because some of the mind is being strip mined right now. We've learned how to gamify some of the social needs of humans through the platforms. But, if we're lonely, we know we need community. Education is key through community. Do you have any thoughts that hit you while you're driving across the country with your friend talking about, hey, look, how do we fix this? How do we get people in a room to talk, to learn, to respect, maybe even, God forbid, love someone that they're in their community with, and build a better future that we all want? Do you have anything that looks at education and community in your framework that you think is prescriptive, that every town that you went to, either you saw something awesome or you think every town should do X, Y, Z to build that tomorrow we want? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, it does. So I do, to directly answer it, I think the one thing every town and community should have is like a wonderful communal focus point. So I always think of this from my time at when I was in Palo Alto. They have this old theater. It looks like a theater from like the 40s. And every day they just play 2 old movies, and they open it up for free to kids. And they have like an old popcorn machine, and outside the theater, there's like, places to play, and they hold like lectures and classes there. And it's just a place to gather, and you meet people every time you go. It has this like nice, warm community feeling. And I think every community should have that. I think, leaders in the town should take it upon themselves to really make it a vibrant spot, because, young people need role models to look up to. They need to form those connections. They need to be socialized into like the kind of qualities that lead to healthy, productive, virtuous people. And like that's what a community center can do. And I don't think that's so hard. I mean, it sounds like you did that with the space you're currently in. And you know, there's plenty of real estate today. So, you know, I think that is town after town should be able to do. I think if I had $1 billion, I would probably go do that. It's, you know, it's not the most scalable, but I think it's really important. On the education side, I totally agree with you. Like the box has just been dramatically shaken because of COVID, and we don't have to put all the pieces back the same way. And so, you know, to me, there's a few things available now that have never been available before. So one of them is, you know, one amazing teacher could reach millions of people. And, you know, we put high production value into things like Netflix shows, and they're addicting because they're produced, you know, in a way that makes you want to keep watching. Well, why don't we teach math that way? Like, why don't we teach English that way and history that way? Let's go get like Brad Pitt to go teach, you know, American Civil War. You know, we can invest in the production of a single course because it can teach millions. So, you know, the marginal cost is zero of production. So I think we should be using all the techniques we have for entertainment to teach people. Second, you know, if you're teaching everyone sort of through that mass kind of medium, then it opens it up for a new way of in-person interactive learning as well.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Plus you have, you know, small groups with one-on-one or 1-on-5 kind of engagement with a tutor or a, you know, a teacher, and you can make it much more practical. So instead of them sitting hearing a lecture, it's like, no, let's go crack at this, you know, here's $20, like go put up, you know, a website and like go figure out how to, you know, figure out like the basic accounting of like costs and revenue. And let's teach you how to do this. You know, you can have new models of education where, you know, part of the course is actually trying to generate money so that kids, instead of going into debt for college or school, they're coming out of it with savings that they've produced and skills they've learned, practical application. And so I think all of that's possible now with education, and that's the direction we should be headed, is teaching people how to like learn themselves. So to be self-starters, to find the information they need, and to actually like navigate the world. So, you know, force them to do it with coaching and mentorship, so that by the time they leave school, they'll always be able to do it.
No, I think there's so much there to unpack, even down to, if you look at how people treat social media right now, right? People are marketing for brands for free.
Yeah.
Like they will like literally take clothing that they pay a premium for, shoes, and they want to share it out there because of the cycle they get mentally. What would happen if a brand partnered with DECA, for example? Like, do you know what DECA is in the schools?
Yeah.
So there's this program that it's in a lot of schools, and they have high school kids who are like running a store in their school. And these stores, they sell random products, snacks, foods. And what would happen if a big brand nationally partners with regions of DECA and says, hey, we want you guys to do a marketing campaign for a new product release we have. Here's $450,000 that's going to cover all these cities. And now you have these kids who are doing real world work on behalf of a brand versus selling damn Cheetos. Like, we don't need more fucking Cheetos sold in the high school to kids who are, you know, trying to have awesome brains. We have brands who have market needs. And yet we're in this weird loop, it feels like, where it's like education's over there, and there's a few that are going to break through and be the creators. Everyone else, let's just have them play a part in the game and be the consumers. And I have this vision of a future where we all kind of wake up and unite under this idea that, no, we were made to create. We were all creators, not consumers. And we're super happy when we're scrappily creating. And I believe the American dream that you saw inside of everybody that was out there is this craving for community of creativity and experimentation together to build a meaningful tomorrow. Like that place where I get to add value and beauty to the world. And I don't see a lot of bold leadership generationally, meaning starting young, that leads into even senior citizen age. where we're guiding people along this pathway as a community. I think we're so consumed in keeping the buses running, making sure that this program runs. And I get it. We've overbuilt certain communities. Now we have issues with sewage, septics, all these problems. But I hope we can find our way back to a bum rush on a great future that we're all participating in. And there's going to be some casualties. It won't work out for everyone. We won't have the perfect social infrastructure to make it happen. But we will be happier because we're going to be scrappy and fighting to build something. And I would argue, less money, harder work with people you care about would lead to a better state of our country than more people sitting on their asses with Cheetos, watching more Netflix, dividing people. Not a slam on Netflix. I think it's a great service. But, I think there's a great future out there that should be unlocked in people. And that's hopefully the new American dream. With the book, to kind of tie some of these things kind of all back together, where can people get the book right now?
So they can order the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's also in a bunch of local bookstores. The title is Union, a Democrat, a Republican, and a Search for Common Ground. And I hope people pick it up and enjoy it.
And where can people find you if they want to kind of interact with you on social media or online in different spaces?
Yeah, they can shoot me a message on Twitter. My name, I guess, username is @Jordan Blashek, or they could just go to our website, unionthebook.com, and shoot me a message on that. Just to finish up on your last point, just to add quickly, I think that is the right vision. That to me is like where we need to go as a country, that everybody's empowered to be a creator, to build a better future, and our system's designed to support that. And I think what we saw across the country is that the system that worked for us for decades, from the 1940s after the New Deal to today, has done wonders. It did amazing things, but it's not designed for the world today. And everybody feels that. We feel it. No one has faith that Congress is going to figure out the right answer right now, or that all of our bureaucratic agencies are going to come up with the right answer for what the future of work looks like. And so the real answer is that it's going to be people empowered from the bottom up who are going to solve this. And I think that's what we saw on the road. It's what we write about in the book. And I think your vision is exactly right. And we need more people like you who are sharing that vision.
Yeah, well, I think that's why we're friends, right? Common vision, big picture of a scrappy world. It's funny you mentioned that, because I come back to the idea of when America started. Could you imagine what it was like getting off the boats? Like, there are no hospitals.
No.
There is no Social Security. There is no schoolhouse. And yet people are like, my ancestors came over from Europe, super jacked to get here. And people were dying on their way here. Like, the sisters died in the family. And yet it was this belief that, no, I'm going to go create. I'm going to have agency over what I become. We're going to do this together. And there was a sense of kind of needing each other. And somehow we're pacified right now. And it's changing. Everyone's waking up right now. The question is, can we harmonize collective energy that right now is a bit collective chaos into collective genius? And that's this art form we've got to go through right now as a country that is a mix of politics, it is a mix of education, it is a mix of industry collaborating together to figure out not how to jump over education or jump over politics, speaking of what's going on in DC right now, but how do we harmonize those three things of politics, industry, and education to unlock this lifelong learning stack where humans hang out together, learn soft skills, are inspired, hold each other accountable, and create. I'm a big believer, create R&D and create art and create value and beauty around specific industries. And I do think a big answer to this problem is, the kings of capitalism opening up the kimono and saying, here are our future roadmap problems. scrappy, awesome human beings who've invented our past go invent our future. And right now, they own the platforms and own the game, but they're really not opening up the kimono. Like, I'm a big fan of X Prize with Peter Diamandis, but let's be honest, it reaches a really small select group of innovation assassins. It doesn't really reach Joey Bag of Donuts in middle America. And we need a platform that reaches Joey Bag of Donuts, where it's like cookies on the bottom shelf, something that inspires him to, like, instead of going to the pub to scream at a Lakers game, he can, go hang out with his buddies at the pub and talk about what they're going to make on the weekend. And there is a systematic way to do it. I mean, that's a lot of our work. That's a lot of what you guys are looking for and doing out there. I'm just hopeful right now we don't end up rebuilding the past.
Agreed. You said it. Like, it used to be, you came to America, all you were promised was opportunity and an adventure.
And pain. Like, welcome to the game.
We're kind of back there, like all you're promised is an adventure. And, if anyone who thinks Social Security is going to be there for them in 40 years, like, I'm sorry to tell you, it's not going to be there. Like, all you're promised is an adventure and the opportunity. And there's something exciting about that. And, more people just need to be kind of called to that adventure and to set off on it. I always love the early stories in the Bible are all about people called to adventure. It's like
Yes.
Abraham called to, like, move to the land. Joseph called to, like, bring the Jewish people into Egypt and then out of Egypt. Moses called to bring them out of Egypt. It's just one adventure after another where you're called to it. And that's what's inspiring. Like, everybody, should have that in their life, this, like, call to adventure. And that's what'll kind of create that creator future that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think we are made, we like certain movies because we see ourselves in them, right? We play video games like people do. I can't stand it. But, like, people get way into video games because now they're the hero. And you talked about the books as a child, like the hero, right? And it's like, there's nothing more inspiring than to drive the country and see people who want that, but nothing more depressing than seeing people who are stuck in a cycle where they can't get that. And, we've exchanged a lot of this, journey towards creation where we would get together. You mentioned churches earlier, like, people would gather and kind of co-create community, hold each other accountable. It's as if we're afraid to have a new vision and say, this is how we live. This is how we die. This is what we do as humans. Because it's like, if we say this is, well, we're going to offend someone. And it's such bullshit. Like, we need a real clear plumb line that we can all agree, like, hey, let's not, like, create ugliness and suck value out of everyone. Let's create value and beauty. Can we agree that would be a good goal? Can we agree that you have agency over who you become? Can we agree that community is a way that you learn and grow? Can we agree that these are best practices every human should maybe explore a little bit? Like, what does your civic engagement in your community look like? What does your self-talk look like? What does your money management look like? And God forbid you get people together to talk about those things so that they can take care of themselves. And then once they have some mastery over that in community, you say, hey, what do you want to make? How do we support you now in making, because you're a good human being that can stand on your own two legs? Because the aspirations, everyone wants to make, but they don't even know how to stand up anymore. They don't know how to stand on their own two legs and withstand the struggle. Because when it gets hard and all of a sudden you're not the next rap star or the next NBA athlete or an esports gamer, it's like, well, I guess I'll just go work at Taco Bell. It's like, drives me crazy. So I did want to kind of, I guess, button this up with, a couple parting thoughts from you. What are things that you do personally to kind of maintain your openness in a political nightmare? Meaning it's not about anyone in particular when I say political nightmare. What I mean is it's just tense in every direction. So what do you do to maintain that openness in that? Because you seem to be fairly open.
Yeah. There's a couple things that that I recommend. A big part of the book was realizing that through my conversations with Chris, I had blind spots. There were things I just didn't know. Like he could tell me things that it made my views better because he taught me something. And so I think it is, as a fundamental principle of politics, I think it's really important to hear the other side, to listen to the other side. It's not always comfortable, but to me, that's like true justice, is like hearing the other side. And so more people need to I think adopt that mentality instead of silencing them. I don't know if anyone watched Bill Barr recently testifying before Congress. Every Democratic congressman reclaimed their time after they asked him questions, which means he couldn't answer. And that to me is like the heart of injustice, is not giving the other side a chance to speak. And so the other side's going to disagree with me. Chris disagrees with almost everything I say. And yet I'm improved and enriched by having that conversation. So I think step number one is just hear the other side and go out of your way to get it, because it makes you better. Number two is, I think we all know and agree now that social media and the media are manipulating our emotions, and they're polarizing us into camps. They amplify anger. Someone recently told us that bad news sells 8-1 over good news. So like, they told us that in the context of our book, which was disheartening. And there's a reason social media and the media amplify all the bad, because it sells more. And so knowing that, the two options are, well, we could try to like change the system and punish the social media companies, but that's going to be hard. I think the better option is just to try to change your own behaviors. So in the same way that we're all realizing, like meditation, stretching, good eating habits, these are all like qualities of a healthy body and mind. I think we have to do the same now with our social media diets and actively our feeds, so that not only are you getting the other side, but you're getting good news. I had a friend who designed his Instagram so that it was feeding him like beautiful imagery, so nature, and like inspirational quotes, instead of like, people showing off at their parties or houses and making him jealous. He was like inspired and shown beauty. And I think everybody can do that in their lives. And so take some agency over what you're getting, so that you're protecting your own sort of balance and health. And then I think lastly, and most importantly, is just as we head into this political season, just remember that like we're all Americans first, and whatever happens at the end of the day, like we have to come back together. So whatever side wins, like don't gloat, don't like hold it over the other person. They're gonna win in 4 or 8 years. So like don't like perpetuate a cycle of retribution and anger. Let's be magnanimous. There's virtue in being magnanimous. And so I hope everyone realizes that on November 4th, that we're still a country. We still need to come back. Whoever wins, it'll be okay. Like the country will survive, and let's move forward.
Yeah, and discover this new American dream again. Like I think you've said it so many times throughout this about there's shared ground, and I really, I think a lot of people don't believe that's there, but I also don't think a lot of people have done a road trip like you. So I'm hopeful that everyone can experience the road trip through your book, and maybe that this conversation has caused some people to go seek out the other side and shut up and listen, and maybe build some new friendships and believe that they still have a role to play, because I think everyone does. I know everyone does, and I know you believe that too. So I'm grateful not only for your journey and the investments your parents made in you that kind of set you off on this path. I'm grateful for the book that the two of you have put together, and I am also grateful for the work you're continuing to do, helping shape and lead a lot of people in trying to unlock this next phase of education, community, innovation. And I can't wait to have you out here in October, and however we can ever help. I would encourage everyone who's watching this or listening to this, at the very least, you can go connect with Jordan on social media, do a quick review on his book, at least get the distilled down version. We'll be buying copies for our leadership network. And in each of the cities, we have book clubs where people read books together that, sometimes they're different races and politics and religions. They actually share a book. I mean, my God, what are we doing? Yeah, it's horrible. But we're excited to read the book with everybody. Very grateful for your time, and hope you stay safe and well. See you soon.
Yeah, Nick, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you. I loved it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome.
Perfect. All right, man.
You're a natural interviewer.
Oh, I have fun.